Don't worry. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Huh? Nice little break after Richard Marshall there. Last hour left before the end for today. Closing ceremonies. Huh? Any liveliness? Come on. All right. Our next speaker here is Javier Gonzalez. He's a managing partner of Verily Technology Advisors and a vCISO and a constant contributor, CornCon, and a friend of ours. So please give a very warm welcome for Javier.
Thank you, Sean. See that we have this thing. There we go. So hopefully it won't be too painful for you. I know that this is what is between me and drinks, so I'll try to keep it interactive and entertaining. Just a bit of background for those that wondering who this guy is. I've been in the industry for now 3 decades. Been 4-time CISO, 1-time CTO. Been running my company now for about 15 years. Focused mainly on vCISO work now. Currently, have a contract as a vCISO for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and that's been quite interesting. And while doing work in Puerto Rico, I met some folks there, and they asked me, hey, we would like you to come down to Curacao. We have this conference in October, and we want to make all this about digital trust and AI, and you're a cybersecurity guy. Can you come and talk to these guys? You're going to have about 17 to 18 head of central banks of Caribbean nations. So in a couple of weeks, I'll be down there. So this is kind of like the dry run of this presentation for these folks. So hopefully I get some good feedback from you and do that. So some of the things that we're going to talk here, I'm going to hammer a lot on the trust. And there's very good reasons for that. I'm sure for those of you who were there at the CISO Summit yesterday, you heard a lot about AI and different things, right? All from the spectrum. This is all math and algorithms. Doomsday is around the corner, and some of the other things. But I'm going to try to focus here really more on the fundamentals, because trust is really the fundamental thing. And it goes to everything that we do in life, right? There's implicit trust. There are things that we do. We don't question when we open a Coke bottle and start drinking, right? We're not starting to think about, is it poison, or is it going to be bad for me? So we got plenty of examples throughout about implicit trust. And I know in the cyber world now we talk about zero trust. I personally have a very difficult time, with the name, not with the concept itself, but with the name, because it's not about zero trust, but it's actually turning away from implicit trust and going into explicit trust, right? You have to demonstrate to me first that you earn my trust, and then I can do something, right? So, so we'll go through some of these things, and then how we tie all this with AI and why that is important. So today's world, as we know, I mean, there are no shortage of examples, right? We got things that are either factual or fake and in between. Now, the sources of the things are important, but most importantly is that we have become more and more tribal in the way that we see things, right? If we get people that they think and look alike to us, no matter what they tell us, we got that implicit trust, and we say, yeah, that is true. And with that comes other things like, the spreading of that information. And for that same reason, right? If I trust it, I'm going to take it at face value. I'm going to, spread that information. The other way is that if you don't believe in that, then you're going to say it's not factual, it's false, it's misinformation, disinformation, and whatnot. And the problem is that we still don't know from the source if we take an implicit, stand, whether that is true or not. We just take that because of the trust that we have. So I think that, the biggest thing for us is how do we define trust, right? That's the first step. It's like information. When you look about, please define information, you'll find a number of different things about information, but you won't find a single information. And when it comes to trust, I think it is a lot simpler because it's really when we get to a point that we know that for some reason we have understood that whatever the person or this thing is telling us, it has some validity, is truthful, it got integrity built into it, and then we actually proceed, from that point. If the opposite, then we say no, and then we just don't pay attention to it. So getting, to know trust also is not a simple concept. It's quite complex, and depending on the things that we talk about, the topics that we're talking about, they become even more complex and more difficult to discern and to really get to the bottom of it and say, yeah, this is something that I can trust, or this is something, I'm not sure. It sounds reasonable, but I'm not 100%. So when we look at, what are the things that will help us to get, get that trust and whatnot, we think about, security, right? In our world, obviously, it's extremely important that we trust, the systems and the information that we get. And there are a lot of different other aspects, right? We can look at CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. That's one way to measure that. We also can look at, the people that are dealing with the systems and, what they're doing, to trust that information. We also look at the transparency, right? The more transparent things are to us, they're easier for us to understand, and we feel that there's nothing behind it, help us to actually achieve that trust. So that is very important when we're talking about the trust, that we have that transparency always present, because always will create some doubt. If it looks fishy, if it looks not so clear, it will have, a question mark in it, and that makes that, a little difficult. Reliability, as I said before, is also important. It is something that, when we're looking at these things, kind of like, we say something, come through, right? In the case of a person, we're looking at, is this somebody that actually keeps its word? Is this a system that always respond and deliver what it's supposed to do? So extremely important. Why this keep on going this way? Competence and benevolence, they self-describe. These are things that are markers, the things that are really important to have in it, because they will be deterministic in whether we trust something or not. We feel something that is going to be punitive or something that is going to cause us harm, we tend to actually fade away from those things and not really give the benefit of the doubt, when these things, come to that. So when we look at the digital trust, we are specifically talking about the systems, and especially nowadays, we'll talk later on about AI, about how much faith do we have in the system and the outputs of the systems. We look at, the adoption is truly affected by something we trust or don't trust. If we feel that system is going to cause harm, or the system is going to be something that is not going to produce the results that we expect, that will be a problem. So that will affect the adoption and the results that people that are looking to have when they are implementing the systems won't be there, because people just simply won't use the system, or simply will resist use the system. Like I mentioned before, obviously transparency is extremely important, and you can see that at the end, the result, it would be about how many people in the end actually end up embracing the technology and accepting that. And a lot of times, the lack of trust is a primary obstacle and why the technologies don't get actually get success when they invest the time and the effort in having these systems in place. So it is important that we understand, why the trust, especially in the digital environment realm, is important, because we talk about, what are the foundational things that we have there. When we look from an interpersonal standpoint of view, trust is what creates having friends, talking to a stranger or whatnot, that help us actually break the barriers and really create and foster the environment that is necessary to create that trust, right? That link, with people. It also, as a result, after you establish that, help us to establish collaboration, and that is key, especially in the working world, because you want to keep chemistry with teams. You want to have people to actually be in touch with one another and really interact in a way that there's no friction, that they feel comfortable with somebody. And you can look at everything from the interpersonal elements to the professional elements. If you get somebody that you feel that is not ready, is not skilled enough to do a task, that will create a friction. So although it's kind of like behind the scenes, trust right there for somebody that feels that, hey, you got my back, I got your back. It's extremely important in the digital age that these things are present. Oops. Communications, without saying, obviously, it creates a more relaxed environment. People feel more comfortable sharing information, obviously telling the truth as opposed to holding back, because they don't feel that they can trust you and they can actually tell you as it is. So definitely it's a big point when it comes to the whole digital age. It's also important, the loyalty part, because there's a lot of stuff that comes behind it when we talk about trust, especially because employee retention, right? It comes to that. If they feel that they have an employer that they can trust, you build loyalty, and loyalty brings a lot of other benefits behind it, because the employees will be behind you. They'll be, they feel safe to actually share what they think, and they feel comfortable going the extra mile for you. Risk-taking is actually another area that is interesting, because when you get somebody that trusts somebody, they'll go to the extra length of doing their task and their job. So trust actually creates and fosters that type of environment where you have people, not only they're going to do what they need to do, but they're also going to go above and beyond, because they feel that they have protection, that they're not going to be left alone, that they're going to be blamed after the fact. All these things obviously increase the operational excellence, right? That brings efficiencies into the environment, because now people are working at all cylinders. They feel that there's nothing that is worrying them. They don't feel like this is not the place that I want to be. So the benefits are immense for companies when they have trust between them and their employees, because now they actually can perform at the expected levels without having any detrimental effects. And the last, is kind of like the business, competitive edge, right? Now, when you look and people are working all at unison, they are working for the common goal of the company. You don't have, a few carrying all the weight, and you get some deadlocks that you have to do. That actually brings a lot of goodness, right, to the company. And at the same time, now you become more competitive in the market. You get separation in the market, right? When you look at, they do surveys about, MP scores. The customer says, yeah, I mean, when I call the customer service, these people are always happy, ready to help. They are with me. I don't feel like they're going to leave me behind. So those are all the things that create the chain that creates all these benefits for the companies. But it all starts, creating that truthful and safe environment for them. Some of the positive, like risk, you have positive and negative things. On the positive side, obviously, you got high performance. You got people actually going the extra mile, doing the stuff that they want to do. They don't hesitate to actually get out of the box, to actually look at new ways. It's like, hey, maybe I can do a little bit more, because they feel that they feel recognition. When they trust it, they feel that they can do a lot more than what they're supposed to do. Same thing when it comes to the resiliency for the company. When something goes wrong, inevitably something will go wrong at some point, you're going to have people that will have to step in. You will need to actually jump into the crisis. You will need to do a lot of different things that may be uncomfortable, whatnot, but now you have people that are working for the common goal. There are people that actually feel that it's a team, we're working as one, and they will come through for you. In terms of negatives, obviously, you start thinking about, engagement. Morale goes down. If they feel that they can't trust the employee, the employer, they feel like, it's a lost cause. I don't even know why I'm here. I mean, that has a trigger effect that people will continue to disengage, performance will go down, productivity will go down, right? So you will create even more problems. So all these problems will cascade for the lack of trust that exists between them. It also creates conflict and tension, right? So if they are looking at something, they feel like, am I the next one? Am I going to get laid off tomorrow? Because these people are only looking at the bottom line. So all these things, are important when you look at the balance, between employers and the leading up to the adoption of digital technologies. These things actually will create more problems for the employers as they go down, right? Some impacts here, obviously, you got everything from business to social problems, psychological well-being, adoption that we talk about. In some cases where you have companies that are global footprint, you will have that issue as well. So there are a number of different things that really trust affect, and the lack of it in the company performance, and that will be reflected, very obviously. This will be very explicitly seen when you have these things. Obviously, you have some challenges when you're looking at the trust side, right? You're trying to build that trust and whatnot. So now we're shifting about there's very specific things, this bring in. First one, compliance and, privacy. There was some talks, earlier today that, that really focus on that, right? Especially systems now like AI. If people are like looking at the implementation of these systems and what they do. Incidentally, I just came back, from a workshop, an AI workshop, and one of the things that we're discussing is like the difference between using a closed system versus an open system, when it comes to AI. So ChatGPT, Gemini, Microsoft, all those are actually closed systems, and all the private data, all the user data actually remain on those systems, right? And people understanding that their information, the whole audit trail, everything that they've done actually brings a very good point. It's like, these are things that can be used against me later on. So that trust could be an impediment to actually get a company to take advantage of some of these technologies. Transparency in the technology as well. A lot of people don't feel that they understand what's behind it. How this is going to affect them. Is this going to take my job? There's some that talk about that before. There will be some impact. But for every job that AI may take, it's likely it's going to create 2 or 3 more jobs. Because you need people now specialized doing other things that are not done today. People are doing the coding, people that are doing the training of the data, people that are actually monitoring the systems, making sure the compliance is there, et cetera, et cetera. So having people to actually trust and understand what is going on with the technology is extremely important for these things to be successful. Fake news and misinformation, obviously, talk a little bit about that. In terms of the digital technology and whatnot we've seen in the platforms, social media probably is the biggest one. Lack of policing versus going to the extreme to censorship and whatnot, finding the right balance that people feel comfortable using the technology, and at the same time that they can actually trust what they're getting from those systems is important. And there are other elements that we won't touch here, but you think about how do you train people? How do they do debunking, like Wynn was talking before, which is more specifically about empowering them, spotting what is real and what's not, right? Understanding what are the skills that you need to have to actually spot what is misinformation and disinformation. And then trust have to be in it, because no matter what we do, what we say, if they don't have the trust on what we're telling them to do, then we have, the byproduct of it. Threats and some of the other things that you see here as well. I mean, all these things, come combined when we're talking about trust, and then actually permeate down the stream on the adoptions and the really acceptance and embracing of the technology, and ultimately the success that these companies will have as a result. Taking, for instance, AI, the cost of AI for a lot of the companies is not a trivial thing. The cost of some of these models, we're talking about millions of dollars, and when you're talking about making this investment, making sure that the systems will be used and the results that you expect that you will get out of it, I mean, those are big propositions for them. So they definitely are in their best interest is to really, their employees actually trust what they're doing, that they feel that they are behind it and they're rallying to get the implementation and the adoption of these technologies. So now we're going to move into the AI, and call it to the rescue because it's kind of like being a little ironic with this, but AI may actually make it better or make it worse in the end, right? There's no two ways about it. So if we don't take care of the foundational aspects, which are the trust, AI, and then it could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. And you see, again, try to define AI and what people actually perceive of AI. For the most part, when you talk to the most common people, they think it is, this system somewhere that is capable of doing nefarious things that we have to keep in check, that is going to take over the world, without realizing that the system itself is really no more like IR described it being an algorithm. Problem is that the system itself is not the problem. The problem is how do we actually leverage and use that system? And that's it. That's where the humans come into play. So when we look at see how do then we take AI and we look at see how we can make the world safer, right? In my world, in the cyber world, we talk about being able to actually detect and respond a lot faster, right? Again, we take almost like an implicit stand that we take in AI and it's going to be able to do these things. However, what happens if the system is tainted? If the system is biased? If the system, for some reason, decide to do whatever they want to do, right? So, while this is true that the system actually can make us safer, there are a number of factors that actually will determine whether this is true or not. It's not a given, it's not a default, because it depends greatly how we use the system and how we actually create that system. The predictability, I mean, this has been around for a long time, right? And it's been really more of the comparison, right? We're looking for pattern matching to, looking for repetitiveness of things and happening. But reality, what AI is going to change for us is that it's going to be able to see things that we have not even spotted before. A good example of that, if you can see how this is being used in the medical field, where they can actually take so much data. They can use, say for instance, breast cancer. They can actually look years of information, pictures and whatnot, and then they can tell it's like the ones that led into, a positive cancer, and they can find things that the naked eye can find. And those are the things that are very powerful. Similarly, for us in security, we talk about indicators of, compromise and different things, but we still very, very, looking for hard data and different things that actually lead us to believe that this is something that is going to lead to an exploit. This is where AI will come in and do things differently, because with all the data that we'll get, we'll actually be able to look at things that we were not even thinking before, because it's going and doing the comparison from very, very early stages where things look like the same for us, for the naked eye, but not for the machine. You can see some of these things, right? We can actually start looking at proactively start detecting things, stopping them, mitigating them, really looking at, what things can we do, go back. We talk about lessons learned a lot of the time. This will actually help us to really strengthen security in ways that we haven't seen just yet. We're just scratching the surface, when it comes to AI, but definitely this is something that will be good. Now, there's a camp that says like, yeah, we can do all these things, but guess what? The bad guys, they're actually getting to these models as well, and they're going to do it. I personally think that yes, at the beginning, while we get things kind of like settled down, there'll be a little bit of struggle, but it's not going to be any different because people are going to try to continue to look for the weaknesses and whatnot, and we're going to look at AI precisely to do the things that we haven't been, capable of doing thus far, right? Securing, you know, um, taking the operating system and hardening it now in ways that can still operate, but it's not going to be exploitable, right? So there are a lot of different things that we're going to continue to do, from secure coding to yeah, the monitoring, the persistent monitoring, and be able to predict things that even if the bad guys are trying to use these things, the system will get to a stage that will be continuously monitoring and improving, that the chances of getting this, will materialize, bad guys taking advantage and exploiting the system will be greatly reduced. I think the biggest concern for me will be more in the privacy area than in the technical area. Like I said, the technical area, I think that we are going to get to a point where we'll be actually pretty good. However, the side of the privacy is an interesting one, because when you think about how people actually complain about people using their information and whatnot, but they have no problem volunteering that information to begin with. That's something that AI is not going to be very helpful with, because if you willingly put information out and have no problem sharing photos, every little detail of your life, every second you're going to social media and putting these things, there's not a whole lot that you can do with it, And although there's a focus on companies and governments and whatnot, I think the bigger threat is that people themselves are putting, their families, right, at risk by doing these things, right? Yes, technology, we can think about, they can do some of these things, right? We carry phones, presumably, as long as you have a smartphone, they can track you anywhere, right? So if somebody's looking for you, it's not very hard, to actually do it. We even have those things built in the systems now. We get the families, we do that, we share locations, so I can see where my wife is at any given time. She can see where I am. Same thing with my children. So there are a lot of things that for convenience we have out there. However, those conveniences actually compromise our privacy, because even though we say like anyone should not be seeing these things, well, guess what? We told Apple it's okay for them to look at these things, right? They actually receive all the data. They may not look at everything, but you can do a lot of deduction without having to actually show a lot of different things. They get a lot of metadata that will actually lead you. So again, that is important. Now, when it comes to the companies, obviously there's stuff that you can do. You got the anonymization of the data. Obviously, try to clean it, try to depersonalize the data. There are a number of different regulatory compliance laws and statutes that really requires that. We look at the protection of the data while it's in transit and at rest. We have methods to encrypt it. Yes, there are talks about quantum encryption now, and all the different things that you can do. But I think for the most part, with the technology that we have right now, it's going to take a little bit before you can actually break more than 512 when it comes to encryption. Controls. There are a number of controls that you can put in place. They're actually fairly effective. I think with the history and the stuff that we're still getting, we see it's more of the human error that continues to get there. Somebody that by mistake did something, push a button, said something, click something, right? Than anything else. I know that's been during the conference some of the discussions about where the blame goes and whatnot. We're not going to talk about that, regardless of where the blames are and whatnot. It's very difficult to actually put controls when you are giving the liberty to people to actually make that decision. We have to find a balance between what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And it comes in a slew of different arguments, you know, when it comes there, right? From, I would say, legal perspective, compliance perspective, common sense perspective. So not an easy proposition, but I think that AI in general will help to actually fine-tune a lot of the different controls that we have today and really move more into a resilience focus as opposed to just put more stuff in, which is something that we suffer right now. The other side of this, and it's actually very interesting, is that for the longest time, people that has been in the business, you know, several decades, they know there's always been a struggle when you develop software and you need to have data. The same way that AI today needs it to train their models, this has been for the applications. We never had the ability to really create real tangible to test applications before we can actually release them. And then we have regulatory compliance stepped in and say, no, you can't use real data. You'll have to create it. So that created a problem. Now AI actually can make up things. They call it hallucination in some instances, right? You know, they can come up and you say, I need this and whatnot, and they can create stuff that really is completely made up and can actually help create all these different models and test beds for the applications, which is actually is going to be a good benefit. Nothing wrong, no negatives there, so actually a big plus, you know, when it comes to that, and helps into the quest of not having to use real data for our purposes. So how these actually make our life better, right? You know, the human experience is always one of the important things, right? When we talk about what are the benefits, and, you know, how effective the system is and whatnot, and definitely personalized experiences are very important when it comes to technology. What you come out from it is a plus. So when you think about it, you get the adoption part. If people actually like something, they'll use it. If they don't like it, they'll resist it, right? You know, one of the things that I always said about Steve Jobs is that somehow he knew that people will want to have a smartphone. Yeah, this is way before anybody, but you know, he had that idea that this is going to be something that people will want. And he was clever enough that said that don't go to the enterprise, go to the consumer. Because the consumer will drive the enterprise. It actually is, it's amazing because that's exactly what you've seen. When you look at how technology have evolved over time, the biggest shift has been because people want to do that, right? You know, they want to have their own things and they want to use it, you know. About 25 years ago, I was, you know, my first CISO gig was at a hospital. And VPNs were coming along. And doctors jump into that bandwagon immediately because anybody that is in healthcare knows how a hospital system works. It's basically an institution. The hospital is a shell that provides kind of like the infrastructure, and everybody else is like a subcontractor of it. Doctors are subcontractors of the hospital, but they need to get access to that infrastructure, right? The system. If you're a radiologist, you want to get access to the radiology system. Well, guess what? Now you can do this remotely. You don't have to show up at an emergency room, you don't have to show up at the hospital itself, you get access. They were the first ones that say, yes, we love this stuff. All right, here's a laptop. It's already configured. Go use it. It's like, no, I don't use that. I use Mac. It's like, no, 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 but you got to, no, 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 no. I need you to actually get me a VPN client that works with my Mac, because I'm not going to use that junk. I don't like Windows. Now it puts you in the predicament that you actually have to come up with a solution. Why not? Well, to improve that and get the adoption and actually get that personalized experience, we actually have to go and look for a Mac VPN client. At the time were none, and get somebody to actually write custom code to actually get a VPN so they could do that. But by doing so, now we get a huge sector that was happy because now they don't have to actually leave their house. They can do work. And they were actually embracing the technology. So it's always important to see that AI, this is going to tie with it. AI is going to give a lot of people a lot of different things. When you think about how to write a proposal, it's interesting. Any of you that actually have tried to do this with ChatGPT, you can upload a number of different documents. You craft the right question, and guess what? You get a very high quality proposal back. It's very little to do. Same thing you can do with presentations. It even now with the new version give you Python code. So you can go and say, hey, I want to build a presentation and whatnot. Give me the code. Here's the template. Do all this stuff. And if you don't believe me, just look in the back. This is all done by ChatGPT. Obviously, I provided the information, what I want ChatGPT to do, but give me the Python code here. I want to use this template. I want to use this font. I want to have these colors. I want to have all these different things. No problem. And I got my code. That actually increases, the use and the embracement of the technology, because now people look at the practical aspects of what this can do, right? But it's important that I'm doing this, but I'm actually saying I trust them enough, right, for you to do it, and the results, I still can check. But the more you do it, the bigger your trust, into the system, goes in. So you could see that there are a number of different things, everything from chatbots that companies have done, areas where they need help, that they can create scenarios and different things. So it's going to become more and more pervasive, the use. I mean, this is not going back. The genie's out of the bottle. AI is going to continue, and you'll see more and more use cases that will be satisfied, and people will be very pleased with the results. All right. There we go. So with all these things, obviously the system has to be easy enough to use it. You have to have transparency. It has to be clear. You have to be able to actually create some accountability into this whole process. But, I mean, right now with everything that we have, we've seen that the system is capable, and all the results so far has not been disappointed. I mean, they continue to incorporate new features, new ways for us to work and be more efficient, more productive. So while we continue this journey and the user experience continue to improve, you're going to have bigger adoption. You're going to have companies that will look at making bigger investments into this technology. And really, they're going to look at ways to really expand the way that they can actually maximize the investments. Let's see. So, as always, there's always considerations you have to take, especially when it comes to ethical, right? Because as I mentioned before, bias is one thing that is at the top of mind of most people when it comes to AI. We're seeing that depending on the model, who is behind it, they can skew results or things in their favor, not so much into your favor. So tying this with trust, you look at if you feel that the system is biased and it's not doing what you really want the system to do, then you lose the trust and you're going to stop using the system, right? So that's important to consider though when you're looking. It's like, is this system is fair? Is this system is trying to push me in a direction that I don't want to go? Or this is something that is really neutral? It's something that really is doing its job and there's no real motive behind it, right? Some nefarious things, behind it. Importance of it, too, accountability comes, at the highest level. We need to make sure that while we continue to use the systems and we keep on leveraging these systems, there's accountability behind it, right? There's a lot of people that feel that systems can be abused, right? You can think about from plagiarism to stealing things, claiming things that are not yours but others and whatnot. So it's important that the system, when you're using AI, you give credit where it's due, right? Don't claim something that the system did as something that you did, right? So there's enough controls to actually tell about that in that respect. Now, obviously, the values and, in some cases, the human rights and everything else, that comes associated. And this is more in, the social media and some of the other areas that are really leveraging AI. So lots of things that you have to consider. You're looking at the ethical things with AI. So what are the mitigations, all right? What are the areas that we can keep things in perspective, put the right guardrails in place, and not so much to restrict it to a point that is choking the technology and the innovation? We know that there are several areas that people are looking at how to control and regulate AI. This past week, California, the governor vetoed the bill that legislation put together, put up, restrictions on AI, although it's a very wide, I will say, very narrow, limited in scope, type of bill. We'll see more and more of these things, come on the way, because these are one of the things that we have at our disposal, one of the instruments that we have to actually control and make sure that AI is not going to go and create a monster that we won't be able to actually control. Also the data, because, like I said, it's important what we're using for it. A lot of these things actually can create bias. You saw earlier, if you were here, one of the previous presenter show about the bias of the model, showing all the pictures of Michelle Obama and some of the other ones that say, no, this is a man, right? These are things that they create with the systems, and they actually, with the training data, and get actually results that are completely wrong. So those are things that we need to make sure that when we are creating the systems and the data that goes along with it, that we're not creating something that is wrong or really hurtful. So the road ahead, for AI, we can see that we'll need to continue to invest, creating better algorithms. We need to make sure that things continue to be transparent, that things are accessible, that people feel that they can trust what we're doing with AI, that they getting their return on investment on these things, both the companies and the users, right? Important that they feel that this is not something that is going to take away things from them, but it's going to give back to them. It's going to improve things for them. So we'll have to continue to monitor this. We'll have to continue to find ways to really fine tune it, make sure that we get a good balance between what AI is looking to do and what people want to get, from the system. So the ethics behind it will continue to have to be researched. We need more people to actually investigate the consequences, because we're just scratching the surface right now. So we need to actually put some time and effort to understand the consequences of AI. Because like I said, we're just in the infancy right now, but we're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and we're trying to build, the car while we're moving. Final thoughts here, right? I'm a big fan of AI. I told you I leverage this, but there are tons of things that can be done with AI that will actually improve lives, outcomes. It will help business. It will help normal people in their day-to-day activities. The benefits are really now countless. We're just starting to see what really the power and really what this technology can do. But we're still learning. There's still things that we know that can go wrong. There are things that people can take advantage of it. People, they're people. There are people out there looking to take advantage of anything, right? So we have to stay vigilant. We need to actually demand better from the people that are putting together, all the different guardrails, right? Everything from government, from our employers, to even our peers. So we make the technology better, and that we continue to trust the technology in this journey about digital world. Well, with that, I'm going to close out. I know that everybody's anxious, and any questions?
Thank you, Javier. Give us a couple minutes. We'll be here for closing ceremony.